A hand freezes against wet rock. It is a human hand, but so small it could belong to a modern 6-year-old. It does not belong to a child. 20 feet away, something is tearing an elephant apart. Its tail is longer than she is tall. Its teeth curve back like a row of knives. Its tongue tastes the air, and the air tastes of blood and of her. She wants the meat. She needs the meat, or her family does not eat tonight, but she is not the hunter here. On this island, at this moment, she is one of the smaller things that a very large thing might decide to eat. This is the story of the only time in our whole long history when being human did not mean being the most dangerous animal alive. A story about an island so strange it shrank the elephants down to ponies, swelled the rats to the size of rabbits, and left our own kind knee-high and hunted. The island is called Flores, in what is now Indonesia, and around 100,000 years ago it was a place that, in the mind's eye, looks almost like a fairy tale. Except every fairy tale has teeth, and this one's teeth were real and long and dripping. Start with the people. In a cave called Liang Bua, scientists found the bones of a human unlike any other, a species we now call Homo floresiensis. The world nicknamed them the hobbits, and for once the nickname is honest. When their bones first came out of the cave floor in 2003, they were so strange that scientists argued for years over whether they were even a real species, a genuine ancient human, or just a modern person with an illness. The bones won the argument. They were something new. The best preserved individual stood just over 1 meter tall, about 3.5 feet. You could have looked her level in the eye while sitting on the ground. Her brain was around 400 cubic centimeters, smaller than a chimpanzee's, and this is the part that should stop you. A brain that size, by every rule we thought we knew, should not be able to do what these people did, because they made stone tools. They shaped them, sharpened them, used them, carried them from place to place. A brain the size of an orange, running a mind that planned and remembered and worked. Now the animals, because this is where the fairy tale really warps. The elephants of Flores were not the giants you are picturing. They were a dwarf kind called stegodon, shrunk down over countless generations until a full-grown adult weighed maybe 1,200 pounds and stood no taller than a large pony. Overhead stalked a marabou stork nearly 6 feet tall, a gaunt, patient bird that could look a full-grown hobbit dead in the eye. And then there were the rats. Oh, the rats. They were giants too, a rat called papagames, the size of a rabbit, its body bigger than a hobbit's head. And here is the strange truth the cave floor tells us. Rat bones dominate the food remains. These giant rats were not a curiosity. They were dinner, one of the most reliable meals this warped little world had to offer. The whole place had been turned sideways. The big things had gone small. The small things had gone big. And in the middle of it crouched a human being the size of a kindergartner trying to stay alive. Why? Why does an island do this to the things that live on it, turn elephants into ponies and rats into monsters? The answer is one of the strangest and most reliable rules in all of biology, and it even has a name, the island rule. When animals get trapped on an island, cut off from the mainland by water they cannot cross, the place itself begins slowly to reshape their bodies. For enormous animals like elephants, an island is a trap made of hunger. There is only so much food and only so much space, and a giant needs an enormous amount of both. So generation after generation, the smaller elephants survive the lean seasons a little better because they need less to stay alive. They live, they breed, they pass on their smaller size. Over thousands of years, the island quietly shrinks its giants. Full-sized elephants become pony-sized ones. Nothing kills them all at once. The place just squeezes and squeezes and squeezes. For small animals like rats, the very same island does the opposite. With fewer predators to fear and open room to fill, being bigger suddenly pays. Bigger rats win. So the rats swell generation by generation into giants, and there is a deeper mystery hiding underneath all of this, one nobody has fully solved. How did anyone get to Flores in the first place? Flores has been separated from the mainland by deep, fast, open water for millions of years, water that even lower ice age seas never fully bridged. Elephants can swim, that is how the stegodon likely arrived. But the ancestors of these tiny people had to cross that water too somehow, an unimaginably long time ago, and then never leave. However they came, the water closed behind them like a door, and the island took hold of their bodies and began its slow, patient work. And humans, we are large mammals. The island did to us exactly what it did to the elephants. Smaller bodies needed less food. Smaller bodies survived the hungry months. Smaller bodies lived to have smaller children still, and those children had smaller children again. Across an unimaginable stretch of generations, on this one scrap of land, our own proud lineage was quietly, relentlessly shrunk, not by weakness, not by failure, but by the pressure of the place itself. And this is the humbling heart of it. We like to imagine ourselves as the shapers of the world, the species that bends nature to its will, that reshapes everything it touches. But here on Flores, the world did the shaping. It took a species of clever, upright, tool-making apes, and it made them small enough to fit inside the jaws of the giant lizard that hunted them. We did not master this island. This island mastered us and stamped its rule into our very bones. For a long time, we told a heroic version of life on Flores, and it was a good story. We imagined these little people as mighty giant killers, brave bands of hobbits ambushing dwarf elephants with sharpened spears, bringing down beasts many times their size, and hauling the meat home in triumph. It flattered us. It fit the story we like to tell about our kind, small but clever, weak but unbeatable, always the hunter in the end. But in July of 2026, a careful new study turned that whole story on its head, and it did it with the bones themselves. Researchers went back to the thousands of animal bones buried in Liang Bua Cave and looked closely at the marks scored into them. Over 3,000 fragments of dwarf elephant, around 7,000 rat bones. And to read those marks properly, they did something clever and a little grim. They studied a goat that had been fed to a Komodo dragon at a zoo and mapped exactly what a dragon's bite leaves behind on bone. Then they compared the two, and what they found rewrote everything we thought we knew about these people. The rich, meaty bones, the parts of the elephant worth killing for, the thighs and the shoulders carried Komodo dragon tooth marks. The dragons had gotten there first. The cut marks left by human stone tools were mostly somewhere else entirely, on the scraps, on ribs, on toe bones, on fragments of skull and spine. The low-value leftovers. Read together, the marks tell a story with no heroism in it at all. The hobbits were not the giant killers of legend. They were scavengers. They survived by getting to a dragon's kill after the dragon had eaten its fill and grabbing whatever the monster had left behind. And when you really think about it, that is a far more frightening way to live than any heroic hunt. Because it meant walking straight up to the leftovers of the single deadliest animal on the island and racing the clock before it decided to come back for more. It is worth being clear about why this new picture is so convincing, because it did not come from guesswork. It came from patience and from an enormous pile of bones. The researchers did not just glance at a few fragments and spin a story. They worked through thousands of them one at a time, reading every scratch and every puncture like a page of text, and the story those bones told over and over was the same. The dragon's mark on the good meat, the human's mark on the scraps, again and again and again. That is what makes it so hard to argue with. Not one dramatic bone, but a pattern repeated across the whole cave floor, the quiet, unglamorous signature of a people who lived on what was left over. Picture the arithmetic she has to run, our small woman crouched behind that fallen log. The dragon has eaten. It is gorged, and now it drags its heavy, bloated body off into the shade to digest. That is the window. That is her whole chance at food. Minutes may be long enough to dart in, hack loose a limb bone or a strip of hide with her stone flake, and vanish before the thing so much as stirs. Every part of it is timing. Too soon, and the dragon is still feeding, and it will not share, and she is now the smaller animal at the same carcass. Too slow, and it comes back, and here is the thing about a Komodo dragon that makes it so much worse than a simple set of teeth. Its bite does not need to kill you cleanly. Its jaws crush and tear, and its bite drives filth deep into the wound. Even a glancing strike, a wound she might survive in the moment, can turn into a slow, sickening, days-long death from the inside out. So she does not hesitate. She reaches the carcass, wedges the sharp flake against bone, and pulls and cuts and works fast. She takes the parts nobody stronger would bother to fight her for, the scraps between the ribs, the bones she can crack open for the marrow trapped inside. Her entire survival is balanced on a knife edge of timing and nerve, not strength, not weapons, not being the biggest thing in the clearing. Just being fast and being willing to eat what the monster did not want, and she almost certainly does all of this without fire, because the 2026 study found no solid evidence that these people controlled flame at all. Sit with what that takes away. No warm hearth to gather around at night, no cooked meat to make the scraps safer and richer. No wall of fire to hold the dragons in the dark at bay, just small bodies, sharp stones, quick nerves, and the raw, unlit dark pressing in on every side. This is survival stripped down to almost nothing, and somehow, for tens of thousands of years, it was enough. And it is not only the dragons she has to fear. Remember the stork, nearly 6 feet of gaunt, patient bird, standing motionless in the shallows with a long beak built for stabbing and swallowing. To a knee-high human, and especially to a hobbit child, a bird like that is not scenery. It is a genuine predator, tall enough and armed enough to be a real threat. Picture a little one straying a few steps from the group, and that long shadow gliding closer through the grass, unhurried, certain. And here's where being small stops being only a curse and starts at last to become a strategy. Because if you cannot win a fight by being big, you win it by being where big things cannot follow. A hobbit can vanish into a burrow of tangled tree roots, a crack in the limestone, a snarl of undergrowth that a 3-meter dragon simply cannot force its bulk through. Small hands can climb rock walls where heavy claws cannot grip. Small bodies can freeze so completely against a mossy trunk that they become, for a crucial moment, just another shape in the leaves. And there was one more thing on their side, the oldest human weapon of all. There were more of them than there were of any single predator. A Komodo dragon hunts alone. A giant stork hunts alone. But people move together, many pairs of eyes, watching, warning, ready to raise a shriek and hurl stones and swarm toward any threat that comes for one of their own. A lone dragon might take a single straggler in the dark, but a lone dragon does not want to walk into a screaming, stone-throwing group of a dozen small, furious, coordinated humans. And this is the deep truth of what we are, laid bare on the one island where we were prey. We were never the strongest animal, not on the plains, not in the forests, and least of all here at our smallest and most hunted. We survived the way we have always survived, everywhere our kind has ever lived, by being clever, by being together, and by being just fast enough, just often enough to live one more day. When the danger finally passes, she comes out of the dark. The dragon has dragged itself off to sleep. The stork has flown to another shallow. The forest breathes again for a little while, and she gathers her scraps of stolen meat and carries them home through the falling light, the way people have carried food home to their families for as long as there have been people at all. Because that is the thing we cannot let get lost underneath all the wonder and the horror, the dwarf elephants, the giant rats, the racing the dragon, the hiding from the stork. These were people, not creatures, not monsters in a nature film, not some failed side branch to feel superior to. People. They made tools with those small, clever hands. They thought and planned and remembered which dragon denned in which gully, which shallows the stork liked, where the giant rats ran at night. They knew one another. They belonged to one another. And when one of them died, taken in the dark, or lost to the slow poison of a dragon's bite, or simply worn out by a life this hard, the others surely felt the hole it left the same way you would. For hundreds of thousands of years, on this one strange island at the far edge of the world, being human meant being prey. It meant living every day at the bottom of the food chain instead of the top, and they endured it anyway. Everywhere else on Earth, our kind climbed to the summit of the living world and planted our flag and never came down. But here alone on Floris, we lived beneath the dragons and the storks, small, hunted, afraid, and utterly unbroken. So the next time you feel large in the world, master of everything you can see, in command of a planet that seems to bend to your hand, remember Floris. Remember that the world once took our own kind and made them knee-high and afraid and prey. And remember that even then, even there, at the very bottom of everything, they were still us, still thinking, still together, still somehow holding on. They held on for a very long time, far longer than we have been anything at all. These small people lived on Floris for something like tens of thousands of years, generation after generation, born into the shadow of the dragons and dying in it, and never once giving up the island. They are gone now. In the end, the island that made them also outlasted them, and Homo floresiensis vanished, leaving only their bones in the floor of a cave for us to find and wonder at. But they were not a failure. They were not a footnote. They were an entire way of being human, small and clever, and impossibly brave, that survived, against the longest odds our whole family has ever faced, on the one island in the world that dared to hunt us.